What makes Fairway the most unique market in New York City? We provide the best selection, period. 60 varieties of olives, 70 custom roasted coffees, 80 selections of fresh fish. Fairway, like no other market. Visit your local Fairway today.
This weekend, get to Kohl's and take an extra 15% off. Save on tech gear for the family, now just $15.29 and under. The Ninja Foodie Indoor Grill is $279.99. And find denim everyone in the family will love for $18.69 and under. Plus, get a little more for your wallet with Kohl's Cash. Plus, fast and free store pickup. Shop Kohl's and Kohl's.com. Select styles, 15% offer valid January 14th through January 18th with promo code SNOWMAN. Some exclusions apply. See store or Kohl's.com for details.
Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net. Christopher Media, let's make some noise. Welcome to Beer Nuts, a weekly excursion into the world of craft beer, brought to you by MichiganBeerGuide.com. And now, here are the Beer Nuts.
Oh, you said it, buddy. Here are the Beer Nuts. Like 6 of us tonight. I'm Chris. It is Beer Nuts number 84. And tonight's style, something I'm still a little bit in the dark on. We're going to get into that, but with me, let's just write down through it from MichiganBeerGuide.com. JR.
Yo, 84 Lumber Night.
Dugout.
Good evening, everyone.
Uncle Pete.
Cheers, everybody.
Lieutenant Dang.
Hey, happy to be here.
And last but not least, Mr. S.A.K.
Good evening.
Yeah, good look. Like I said, this is the Beer Nuts. So every once in a while, you get a big old show. Big show because big beers. Well, or I guess, is this style even a beer? I mean, I'm going to let you guys start explaining this because I have so many questions.
Well, tonight's episode is on barley wine. Barley wine is life. A lot of people know that little phrase from certain groups and traditions, but there are basically English barley wines and American barley wines. We'll get in a little more detail in a bit, but they're big beers, and I like big beers, and I cannot lie. So we're going to start the show, with, as we always do, with a quote, and we're glad to have Uncle Pete back. He's settling into his new home, so we're going to let him kick off the quote of the week tonight.
Okay, I got a quote from Dave Barry. Says, "When I heated my home with oil, I used an average of 800 gallons per year, but I've found that I can keep comfortably warm for an entire winter with slightly over half that quantity of beer." So whoever couldn't live on just over 400 gallons of beer for a winter, I don't know what's wrong with you.
Hey, he's not wrong.
Well, we won't need 400 gallons tonight because barley wines are big beers, and
that's the only thing I know about barley wine is high ABV. Like, I guess let's start right with the first obvious question I've always had. Is this a beer or a wine? Why is it called barley wine?
Oh, no, it's a beer. There are a lot of high alcohol beers out there, but barley wines are some of the strongest beers, going from about 8 to 12% or more. Before IPAs and stouts took over the craft beer scene, most beers are 4 to 5%. Well, barley wines are way up there, and their strength is closer to that of wine instead of beer, so that's kind of why they got that barley wine name. But make no mistake, there's no grape in its barley, so wine is a term normally attributed to grapes. To get these high ABVs, brewers usually use a lot more malt, barley, to ratchet up the original gravity, and a lot more sugars. Sometimes they'll be amped up with other adjunct ingredients and more sugar. So we'll get in a little bit in a little bit, but I think everybody's thirsty and excited about this. So I believe Dugout is going to kick off with the first beer, and I love the name of this beer. I'll let him introduce his beer.
All right, from Weyerbacher Brewery, that's Pennsylvania, correct? We have Blithering Idiot. And Blithering Idiot is 12%. Real quickly, though, I found the history of barley wine interesting. I mean, originally from Greece, and it predates by a few hundred years the use of hops, so obviously it was a lot different. But it was known as Cristinos Oinos, so that was barley wine. So yeah, they're typically 8 to 12%, and two styles, American and English, of course. My first barley wine that I had is the first barley wine that was introduced in the United States, or produced in the United States, and that's by Anchor Brewing, and that's Old Foghorn. I believe they still produce that, but just kind of hard to get these days. The first one ever to be made, marketed, was Bass Number 1 Ale, which was around 1870. So it's been around quite a while. Back to my beer, Weyerbacher makes some really big beers. They're not shy about it. This particular one is 12%. It's English style. It comes in at 34 IBUs. Uses Northern Brewer, Pearl, and Hallertauer hops. Recommended serving temperatures on these guys are typically a lot warmer to let some of the more complex fruit flavors come out. So I'm going to take a sip of mine here. It pours pretty dark brown. A little bit of a head, not really big. It dissipates pretty quick with no lacing. Sort of a ruby color. So the nose would be like kind of heavy fruit and roasted grain. Pretty pleasant. And the taste is, you get a bit of alcohol burn up in the front, but compared to a lot of other Weyerbacher beers, it's not bad. This is very drinkable right now, and it's produced in, I believe, December of 2017. So, yeah, really a lot of nice earthy spice and roasted grain, maybe a little bit of rye or kind of peppery. Just finishes off fairly sweet with almost like a taste of toffee on your tongue. This stuff rocks. It really surprises me because, as I said, a lot of the Weyerbachers I've had in the past have been really boozy up front, and I've typically sat my Weyerbacher beers away for anywhere from 6 to 12 months before I even cracked them. But if you see this, get it. It rocks.
Right on. And the name's pretty sweet too.
Well, and another point on it is they make this year round. So this isn't a seasonal. A lot of Burry's barley wines are seasonal, but this one's not.
Is it named after the after effects if you drink too many of them?
I would say at 12%. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm glad I just have a 12-ounce bottle. That's all I have of it right now. I can go back to the store and get it anytime.
Look out for the follow-up brew Vomiting Idiot.
Well, they actually have a barrel-aged version of this called Insanity. and we were originally supposed to record this show last night, and there were some technical difficulties, and I drank my Insanity last night. Which is the barrel-aged version of the Blithering Idiot. So you can imagine
Did you see a fox in the desert like Homer Simpson?
Something like that. So, and indeed, if you have two of those, you'll be a Blithering Idiot. And if you have two Insanities, you probably will be committed.
All right.
So these are big beers. There's no doubt about it. So... Well, Chris, since you seem to be kind of new to the barley wine world, let's see what you have. What do you have for us this evening?
From North Peak Brewing Company. It says they are from Dexter, Michigan. The anniversary. I'm going to say this one more time. Anniversary American Barley Wine. It says it's their special 20th anniversary brew. It's 10% ABV, 95 IBUs. Reading from the bottle, right out of your playbook here, JR. To celebrate our 20th year, we brewed a special American barley wine named Anniversary. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to sharing many more beers together for years to come. Cheers to you from all of us at North Peak Brewing Company. All right. It says mine is from late August 2017. It's still delicious and half gone already. I poured it... kind of a real light foamy head, dissipated really quickly. Color is, we're somewhere between brown and amber, but you can see through it. The nose, it's really sweet and hoppy. You say they use a lot of extra maltiness. I mean, that would make sense. Oh man, the warmer this thing gets, the sweeter it gets. But yeah, real crisp mouth, like a crisp medium mouthfeel, and yeah, really hoppy and sweet. It's hoppy up front and then sweet as it goes down. This is really good, and I have been drinking ahead, so this bottle is half gone. But wow, yeah. The warmer this, I'm almost pissed that I put it in the fridge last night. I should have just left it out. Because Doug, you were right. You said the warmer this thing seems to get, the more the flavor seems to jump out. This is really good. I'm quite pleased. Now I know that it's not wine. I'll be picking some of these up when I see them. So, right, who is next? Oh no, am I alone? Oh boy.
No, I was on mute. I'm here. Where's everybody else?
I'm checking right now.
I was on mute too because I was talking. What I wanted to say is wanted to point out that you are drinking an American barley wine. Most of the beers that we'll be sampling tonight are English barley wines, but I wanted to point out the differences. So I've got my handy style guidelines out. And category 22C is American barley wine, a well-hopped American interpretation of the richest and strongest of the English ales. The hop character should be evident throughout, but does not have to be unbalanced. The alcohol strength and hop bitterness often combine to leave a very long finish. So there's some other thing. I'm not going to read this word for word for everything, but specifically under flavor, I'm going to read. It says strong, rich malt flavor with a noticeable hop flavor and bitterness in the balance. Moderately low to moderately high malty sweetness on the palate, although the finish may be somewhat sweet to quite dry, depending on aging. Hop bitterness may range from moderately strong to aggressive. So I won't continue to read the entire definition, but what I really want to point out here is American barley wines, big surprise, have significantly more hops than their English counterparts. So a traditional English barley wine, and that comes from the fact that most of the hops in the UK are earthy and not nearly as strong and piney and bitter as our American hops. So. And similar to the IPAs, where you get an earthy IPA from the UK, it's not nearly as strong hop flavor as the hop bombs that we get over here. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of the biggest difference. Is just more that American hop, more hops. We amp up the hops in our beers traditionally as an American.
Is that why? Is it just because America? Is it because we like Big Macs and big boobs? I mean, is it just why? Is it we like hops over here?
Just really comes down to the hops. We traditionally use a lot stronger hops, and our hops aren't these earthy ones. They're the big piney, floral, citrusy. We've just taken the hops to another level. So. I guess you could say it's the Big Mac of barley wines, but I don't think it's a good. I don't think it's a very good analogy in this case. But
gotcha.
So I guess we're kind of doing this backwards because we probably should have started with the traditional English barley wine. But SAK is going to kick us off with a really nice barrel aged English style barley wine. So I'll let him take over now.
Thank you. I have a offering from Jackie O's in Ohio. This is Bourbon Barrel Brick Kiln. It is an English-style barley wine, clocking in at 11.8%. I don't know where I got this. I don't know how old it is. It might be 3 years old. It pours very, very dark. You can barely see through it. A little bit of carbonation that went away very quickly.
Well, and for those of you that don't know, Uncle Pete is here, and SAK and myself are all together. So the three of us will all get to review this one, and it's going to be a real treat. So thank you for sharing, Steve.
First off, a lot of caramel. There is some bourbon there. not a real burn. This is a little bit thinner than I thought it would be, but just very complex, very, very rich. Uncle Pete, what do you think? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Okay. Yeah, I poured a little bit in my glass, and it poured thick. Very quickly dissipating head that was slightly off-white. It's kind of a light, very light tan color. But when I put it on the nose, I'm picking up a very sweet, raisiny, sweet kind of an aroma. Sweet, juicy, chewy kind of fruits like raisins comes to mind. But it smells fantastic, and it's one of these ones that I think that I could probably sit here and sniff on it for a while before even taking a sip. But here goes. Nice, syrupy, sweet mouthfeel. Good, thick body on it. The sweetness is prevalent, and followed by some really nice wood barrel flavor. Very warming. It's, what'd you say, 11.8? I don't really get any kind of an alcohol flash. It's masked in there pretty good just because I think of all the flavors. It's very pleasant, very pleasing, and I really appreciate you sharing that, Steve.
I was noticing and looking some of the beers we were going to drink tonight that barley wine doesn't seem to lend itself to a variety of brewing styles. Nobody's brewing with apples or walnuts or coffee. Any thoughts on why that might be?
I don't know. Maybe it's just one of those untouchables that's sort of like, leave it alone. It's fine the way it is. I would, some of the examples like apple barley wine would just make me retch, I think. Unless it were brewed with like some type of apple jack or distilled spirit combo. But maybe that's it. When you start to add like a lot of really bitter hops to barley wine, it turns almost undrinkable. It's too big. The malt has to come through in it to be the drink that it is, so it's sweet. So you've really just got to use hops that complement that malt bill.
Considering how many things people put in stouts, obviously mint and coffee and chocolate and vanilla and peppers, it just seems unusual that people would not experiment with playing with barley wines.
I don't know. For me, Steve, this one, I appreciate what you're saying about stouts and all of the things we like to add to it. But the stouts, to me, tend to come from a more richly dark roasted barley, a higher level of malting on the barley, right? Not to say that these have much less malted barley on it, but it seems to me that these come up much sweeter naturally versus stouts where you might normally have to add a lactose or something to really sweeten it up to this kind of level. So the complement to the roasted, toasted flavor in the stouts are things like coffees and chocolates and all that kind of stuff, where I don't think it would go that great with a barley wine. And these barley wines are very complex on their own with who knows if they're using multiple different levels of barley in it. It could give it that rich sweetness. Just my opinion, IMO.
Yeah, I just tasted this a few times, and I love you get that complex dark fruits, the raisin, the fig, the caramel out of there, and as you age these, especially the barrels, a lot of that stuff comes out, and I actually think maybe an adjunct ingredient would either mask or ruin some of that. I believe this style is it takes some time to brew and mature in the casks, and this is a delightful beer. And I did find a little bit about starting in the 1800s, the brick industry was a large part of the economic development of southeastern Ohio for nearly 100 years. The brick kilns of Athens Brick Company, whose bricks can still see lining sidewalks in Athens, once stood just down the street from our production facility. Brick kiln barley wine style ale is brewed in the English tradition. A deep mahogany hue is accompanied by rich caramel and raisin notes. Light herbal jabs from European noble hops round out the warming brew. So there's your noble hops. Hops are not, they take a back seat to this one. It's all about, a lot of tons of malt and big alcohol. and it's great for the cold weather. Warm your innards for sure. And this is barley wine season now. As brewers, I actually looked into brewing when I was doing a little homework for this show, and traditionally really not a really complicated ingredient bill. The malt bill is very, you could brew with only just very limited ingredients. It's you want all for an English, you probably use a Maris Otter, a European malt, and just a little bit of earthy hops. It's not a hard beer. I shouldn't say it's not a hard beer to brew, because to get that high alcohol, you got to boil a long extended boil, and you got to use tons of hops, which can make the match challenging. But as far as having a sophisticated grain bill or complicated recipe, that's not how you make these. So I can tell you, when I brew one of these, I'm going to try to remember to brew it. It's hard to remember to do this, but it's really like July or August, the end of the summer, because then you can put this away, and it takes 6 months to a year to mature to get these complex flavors out. So remind me next summer, when it's like 95 degrees out, that it's time to brew a barley wine, so it'll be ready for when it's freezing cold up here. All right, so what else is funny is it says English style barley wine, but on their website it says American barley wine, but it tastes more like an English barley wine. And there's a fine line. I guess if you're the brewer, you can call it whatever you want, but the defining thing for me is if there's tons of hops, and this is very malty, I would not classify this as an American.
It might be worth mentioning that this is one of those styles that's extremely popular for cellaring. These can stand up, especially the English style, can stand up for years to cellaring, unlike IPAs and some other things. It does not fall off, and people traditionally, I think, like Doug was talking about with his, he sits on it for 6 months, 8 months, a year. This is something that typically improves with time.
I would agree. So this is a good one. Thank you for sharing it. And so we're about halfway through. We have 6 beer nuts and 6 barley wines. So all of us are going to sleep well tonight, especially those of us here that are together that get to have 3 samples of barley wine.
Yeah.
And, of course, finish the dregs when we're done. But we're going to take this opportunity to take a little break, and our newest segment of the show is the Hipster Tipster, just to go over any new news. Wasn't a real happening news week in the craft beer world, but one story that we just have to mention is, let me see if I can find where I had that. Well, Uncle Pete seems like one of the all-time best-selling beers has fallen off of the top 3 in the American sales. The big behemoth Budweiser is no longer in the top 3.
Oh, no.
Oh,
The not-so-king of beers. The pauper of beers.
Yep. But be honest, when was the last time you went somewhere and saw somebody drinking like a regular Budweiser, not Bud Light, but just a regular Budweiser?
You got to go to the hipster bars. You'll see it.
So what I think it is Bud Light, or by volume, right, is number 1. And then I think it's Coors Light, and then Miller Lite just unseated the regular Budweiser for number 3. Is that right?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
That just ruined my day.
Well, I mean, Bud Light, does it still count? I mean,
Yes.
It's still Budweiser.
No, that's a different. In the terms, Bud Light is the number 1 seller, so we're kind of poking a pot shot at Budweiser, but Bud Light is still Dilly Dilly is the number 1 selling beer in America.
For me,
but there is a lot more people that drink Bud Light than our craft aficionados like ourselves.
That's the frat boy beer when I was in college. Was Bud Light. Now, when I was in the band, it was Coors Light everywhere. Oh, good God! I probably I wish I had stock in Coors for all of the Coors that I bought in my 20s.
So I've found the article I wanted to refer to. Before 2001, Budweiser was the top-selling U.S. beer, but it relinquished that crown to Bud Light. Coors Light knocked Budweiser out of the second spot in 2011. Now Miller Lite has taken over third place, relegating Bud to number 4, according to sales estimates. So Miller Lite, it's kind of sad that the 3 best-selling beers in America are Bud Light, Coors Light, and Miller Lite, which all taste about the same to me.
Yeah.
With all due respect to the brewers, because, it's easy for us to take pot shots at this, but they're doing something right because they're producing what the people want because people are buying it. So it's just because it doesn't appeal to us. But can anybody guess what number 5 is?
Heineken?
Nope. A beer that you would probably not like at all if it didn't have a lime in the bottle. Corona Extra.
Oh.
Michelob Ultra and Modelo both jumped ahead of Natural Light to become the 6th and 7th best-selling beers. So it says, the rise of craft beers, drinkers' changing tastes, and a booming wine and spirits industry have pressured global brewers like Anheuser-Busch InBev, which makes Bud, Bud Light, Michelob Ultra, Natural Light, and Busch, as well as Coors Light and Miller Lite, Parent, and Molson Coors. Big brewers have suffered injury by 1,000 cuts as consumers have been bitten by the flavor bug. Imagine that. People are discovering their beers with flavor, and it's starting to cut into the big behemoth's sales. So, of course, we all know that a lot of the reaction is to go out and buy breweries like Summit and or Magic Hat, Pyramid, Elysian, Goose Island. So, okay, well, I think we can move on from that story, but that was probably the best story I had. In local news here in Michigan, Uncle Pete was happy to be able to get his mug for the Mug Club from the brand new Detroit tap room that Founders opened up, and I also purchased a Mug Club membership. Haven't got my mug yet, but Uncle Pete was there and got his today. Got a great picture of it. How was your experience at the Detroit tap room, Pete?
It's always good at Founders, really. I mean, what can you say? The beers are excellent, and the food was really good. And it was kind of a date day with me and Mrs. Uncle Pete. And we did the Detroit International Auto Show and followed up with picking up the mug at Founders. They did come up with a handled glass mug. It's a pint mug. And they did a glass engraving on it. So I did send in my own little small graphic to have them put on it. It was a bundle of hop cones. And behind those was like a fresh stalk of a few stalks of barley, and then up on top of it, they engraved Uncle Pete on it. So very happy camper here.
Nice.
And enjoyed my first beer at a discount, by the way, as a Mug Club member.
That's awesome. Congrats on that.
Man, I am down in Detroit a lot. I should go sign up for that.
There was only 800.
A few beers.
There's only 800 memberships, and they sold out in one day.
Oh.
I actually was. I'm number 36, and I think
I'm 361.
So I did want to reference one more article before we get back to our beer, and it's an article. You can check my Twitter, MichiganBeerGuy.com. It says craft beer is the strangest, happiest economic story in America. And it says corporate Goliaths are taking over the U.S. economy, yet small breweries are thriving. Why? So without going into too much detail in this article, it's a good read. Check it out. Find it out at Michigan Beer Guy on Twitter. The bottom line is one of the great things that it points out is all the jobs that have been created. Total employment at U.S. breweries have gone from about 27,000 to 70,000. Between 2001 and 2017. So that's a great story about craft beer. More jobs, more good beer.
I'm just a volunteer.
That's Budweiser.
I'm just a volunteer.
All right, Pete. Well, since you're a volunteer, I'd like you to go ahead and introduce us to your beer. So time to start the third quarter.
All right, thanks, JR. What I've brought today to share is Arcadia Ales. Barrel-aged serial killer. And this is a Arcadia is out of Battle Creek, Michigan. They do have a serial killer, basic English-style barley wine. But this is the barrel-aged version of the regular serial killer. Is it coming out okay? Yeah. Okay. And what they do is they age it in the barrel for 12 to 18 months, and according to their site here, transforms it into a more complex layered ale with structure for years. Hazel, claret, and color, pours syrupy and raises off an off-white head. The aroma reveals scents of nutty malt, pralines, toffee, and hints of milk chocolate. Flavor follows suit, but brings to the forefront a bold bourbon presence, rounding and full-bodied. Sip this rare treat at cellar temperature, preferably 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and allow the full malt and bourbon complexity to come through. It has won the gold medal for wood and barrel-aged strong beer at the 2009 Great American Beer Festival. So it's a 12% alcohol by volume, 70 IBUs, so it's kind of high on the hop factor, but according to them, it's an English-style barley wine. So let's pour it up. Comes in a waxed bottle. This one has a gold wax on the rim, on the neck of the bottle. And this one is fairly, I'd say a deep amber color. It's not as dark as the one that the SAK poured, the Jackie O, but it's retaining its little bit of head here much longer than the brick kiln. Seems to have poured a little less syrupy, but the aromas are rich. Very similar, actually, to the Jackie O's brick kiln, with that rich, sweet aroma, syrupy aroma with dark fruits. Yeah, much different kind of a flavor here. It's a lot less, it's not as full-bodied as the Jackie O's brick kiln. Much lighter bodied, a little more higher carbonation. I almost get a little bit of sourness off of this, actually, which I wasn't expecting that. I know that maybe in the past there's been some of the Arcadia ales that have had some hints of sour. I think the Shipwreck Porter comes to mind. One time I got some of that, was soured. It might even have been the Serial Killer. Anybody else, JR? Do you have experience with that one?
It's been a while since I've had one of these. I am getting a little like a vinous character, from this, like a little bit of almost like a tart, acidic, like almost like a wine.
Yeah.
Maybe like a sherry. It's not. I don't think it's like so negative that you would say like this is an infection or anything. It's just I think a characteristic. And but that's typical though, to get like a ruby port, like a sherry wine type flavor out of some of these. And yeah, it's much different than that brick kiln was. I'm just going to read a little bit more about English barley wine style. Of course, this is in a barrel too, and that might have had the effect, whatever kind of barrel it was in. But the overall impression of English barley wine from the style guidelines: a showcase of malty richness and complex, intense flavors. Chewy and rich in body with warming alcohol and a pleasant fruity or hoppy interest. When aged, it can take on port-like flavors, a wintertime sipper. Skipping a little bit, going down, the intensity of these aromatics often subsides with age. The aroma may have a rich character, including bready, toasty, toffee, and or molasses notes. Aged versions may have a sherry-like quality, possibly vinous or port-like aromatics, and generally more muted malt aromas. So it was, and honestly, I hadn't read that before this either. So, that's kind of, this is right in there, as the guidelines say. That's what it's supposed to be. I like to read about the ingredients a little bit. High quality, well modified pale malt should form the backbone of the grist, with judicious amounts of caramel malts. Dark malt should be used with great restraint, if at all, as most of the color arises from a lengthy boil. English hops such as Northdown, Target, East Kent, Goldings, and Fuggles are typical. Characterful British yeast. Although often a hoppy beer, the English barley wine places less emphasis on hop character than the American barley wine and features English hops. English versions can be darker darker, maltier, fruitier, and future richer specialty malt flavors than American barley wines. I think I am a blithering idiot right now.
Oh, you're getting there. See, I started it. I should have gone last with this beer name, right?
This has some overlap British Old Ale on the lower end, but generally does not have the vinous qualities of age. Rather, it tends to display the mature, elegant signs of age. So I am done reading for now. Commercial examples.
Right. Hey, a little bit about Arcadia, though. From what I understand, these barrel-aged beers like Serial Killer and Shipwreck Porter are the last. They're not going to be doing those anymore. I just read that recently, and they've actually pulled up their roots from Battle Creek and moved to Kalamazoo. They're right down the street from the Bell's Eccentric Cafe. So, I mean, literally like 2 blocks away.
So they're rebooting.
So they are rebooting. Yeah, I heard some disappointment in some people talking about a little bit of the chatter on social media about the move to stop making these. So if you see them, buy them. Let them, just put them away. They're good beers.
Well, just a disclaimer, I did hear that the most recent batch of the Shipwreck Porter may have some off flavors.
Well, then
might want to be careful with that one. But no, I have had some great Shipwreck Porters in the past, but I think the latest vintage might be one to do a little research on before you patronize it. But this Serial Killer, you know, there is just a slight tartness to it, but I think it's just that vinous quality of, you know, that goes with some of these. So it's definitely it's nice to try different ones of these because, you know, they're all not the same. It's a pretty broad category, but I think what I've learned about them is when you brew them, don't get too fancy with ingredients. It's really just a boatload of malt and all about the aging them, and it's always nice when you can do them, and they're great to put in barrels. Because when you're aging something for a long time, you know, you want that barrel characteristics come out well. So I just wanted to point out some of the traditional commercial examples. Burton Bridge, Thomas Sykes Old Ale, Coniston number 9 Barley Wine, Fuller's Golden Pride, and the one that really strikes me is J.W. Lee's Vintage Harvest Ale, and Robinson's Old Tom. But those are like from the old country. But yeah, get yourself a good English barley wine and sit by the fire, and you will be a blithering idiot in no time. Yeah. Okay, so it's time for my beer finally. I'm really happy because it's one of my favorites. And as I said previously, we were going to do the show last night. I did save this one, but the insanity bit the dust last night. So this is a brewery dear to our hearts that you've heard us talk about a lot. The coveted Coonan Brewing in Warren, Michigan, and also Clinton Township, right near Chris's homestead. But this is probably my favorite beer that they make. Well, maybe one of my favorite too, because I love 4D too. But this is the bourbon barrel-aged barley wine from Coonan Brewing. And the particular bottle I have is the 2014 vintage. I did get some from this year's, the 2017 vintage, but as we've discussed on the show, it's best to, these beers typically get better with age. So I said, you know what, for the barley wine episode, I have just got barley wine is life, so we're kicking it up to the best. So Pete, you can have the honors. Coonan Bourbon Barrel Barley Wine is probably one of the, one of the top 2 beers that they produce. It's not always available. It's got to be up on things and know when they have it, but you're rewarded handsomely when you find it. So they actually do have a non-barrel aged barley wine available, I believe, now for sale at the brewery. I could be wrong on that, but there was some recently. But this is the barrel aged, the bourbon barrel aged style. So let me get my pour here.
And mine too.
Here's you can go first, Steve. I'm going to let Steve review because everybody's poured but me. Go ahead, Steve.
Right off the bat, this pour is a lot lighter than the other beers. I think the Brick Kiln was the darkest, and the Serial Killer was a little bit lighter, and this is, more of an amber, much clearer. But you can definitely smell the bourbon, almost like a leather smell as well. And certainly the fruits, the fig, the raisins, the other ones that have been mentioned before.
A lot of caramel.
A lot of caramel. Very sweet. Nice blend. Certainly the bourbon is not overpowering, not boozy, but it's definitely there.
Okay, so I finally poured mine, and I poured it into big snifter. Very, very, almost looks like a sherry or a ruby port. Probably why I like these so much, because I also like those types of dessert wines. But it's boozy. I think caramel is the most notable. Boozy caramel, maybe a little bit of vanilla, and a little bit of that sherry, grape flavor. Fig, it's biscuity. Tobacco is a good descriptor for this. But all in all, it's just it's a real treat to have this. It's
outstanding.
And when as it warms, it's going to get even better. And there's no noticeable carbonation. It's very lightly carbonated, which just doesn't bother me at all. The taste is so phenomenal. Doesn't need any help. It's a real winner. What do you think, Uncle Pete?
Oh my God. Yeah, when I poured this, the aroma struck me immediately. It's very, very aromatic. I get a lot of, I guess, the biscuity description or bready description, but the tobacco is what hits me. Leathery, tobacco-y, kind of a dry. There's a sweetness in the beginning, but it finishes very dry and earthy. And it's got legs, there's no carbonation, as you said, but when I roll it around in the glass, it just leaves all those little streamers coming down the sides of the glass. And it's almost like having a glass of brandy or port wine or something like that.
And an oily mouthfeel. Not in a bad way either. It has an oily mouthfeel, and not in a bad way either, but when you kind of rub your lips together after you take a sip, they slide as opposed to stick.
And at 14.5% alcohol, it'll definitely make you a blithering idiot. But it's that's part of what makes it what it is the the booziness. The booze, the caramel, the leather, the tobacco. It's just it's what a barley wine. It's like the definition of a barley wine right here. It's really, we're very fortunate to live here near the brewery because this is one that's pretty evasive. And it's not something, it's something that you break out on a special occasion or, when you really want to impress somebody or if you want to warm up or be happy. So
yeah, we'll go with that.
This is a great beer to drink at room temperature. I'm sure we probably, if we drank it a little bit colder and then waited for it to warm up, but it's at the perfect temperature right now, and it's just getting better.
I think it's the highest ABV the one we reviewed tonight, right?
The one thing about this episode that I'm really impressed with, having been able to try 3 different ones, all of these are way distinct. It's not like, some beer styles you have, when you nail the style, and, 2 or 3 beers can taste very similar. Well, we've had, I think 3 English style barley wines here. I think all the ones we had are barrel aged in this room, and they've all been completely different, unique flavors, and they were all very good in their own right. So, it's a style that's, I guess it's kind of broad. You try them all. So we've had American, we've had some English, we've had some barrel age, and now I think we're going to go. We saved the best for last. Well, maybe not the best for last, but we've saved the Lieutenant Dang, and we know that we love Mother's Brewing, right, Dan? So what do you have for us out there? I think you said that yours is really can't be classified as an American or an English. So I'll let you go ahead, Steve. I was
thinking, kind of like Madonna.
So Lieutenant Dang, what do you got out in Missouri for us?
Well, I've got an old one, but a good one from Mother's here. This is their Foggy Notion, a barley wine, and it is, off the label here, it says, not quite English, not quite American. Foggy Notion is a big ol' 100% Ozarks-born barley wine. It is, so when Mother's first came into existence in, I can't remember if it was late 2011 or 2012, or early 2012, they came out with this as their winter seasonal, and I think it was 2012 they first produced this, and then 2013, and they put it out in 4-packs for kind of like $10 or $11 a 4-pack. Well, then they had this beer, I should say, this beer is, they age it in sherry barrels, and it became hard for them to source the barrels, so it disappeared for 4 years. It was just gone. They're like, yeah, we think we're going to brew it again, and like, oh, we don't know, and then it was kind of like, yeah, we think we're going to do it, and it got a little more promising, but we never saw it, and then so finally, what they ended up having to do, they finally found a source that they could import a whole shipping container of sherry barrels over from Spain, I believe, and they finally put out a fresh batch of Foggy Notion this year. But unlike the 4-packs they originally did, this year they did single bombers, 22-ounce bombers, waxed, and at the tasting room only, at the brewery only, for $20 a bomber. So total change, big flip, but it's still the same as ever, delicious beer. So makes me kind of think about, in a way, it's a little bit representative of how the shift has changed in the beer market. A lot of people are going more towards event-driven beer releases and trying to maximize their dollars and charging more for them as well. Because, I think, a 4-pack of this, 4 years ago, that was a steal compared to $20 for 22 ounces. But nonetheless, here we go. I have the beer here. It's kind of like Old Penny copper color. It's pretty dark. Not a whole lot of light is coming through here. The nose is a little sweet. It's not really hoppy, and stone fruits, maybe plum, grape. I think it kind of plays on that sherry barrels a little bit. Take a sip here. Yeah, it's immediately sweet on the tongue. I think of the sherry kind of grapiness. It's real light. It blends in great with all the other flavors. Biscuity, big. It's 11%. It got a great viscous mouthfeel, chewy, goes down well. Then it kind of lingers with some bitterness, and comes into probably where they were trying to play on that, calling it an Ozarks barley wine, not English, not American, in that it does have a good IBUs to a good bitterness. And I should say, for those that don't know, the kind of southern Missouri and northern Arkansas here where I'm at is referred to as the Ozarks. There's some cities, but it gets very rural, very hilly, not some huge peaks and mountains or anything, but it's a lot of hills and valleys and creeks and streams. And I grew up outside of Chicago, and I moved down here. I really, really learned what a flash flood is, because, man, it floods quickly when we get heavy downpours down here. But anyways, that's the Ozarks. They also do a single barrel version of this, and that's just, instead of taking the sherry barrels and just kind of blending and mixing it down, the single barrel versions are, well, that was the old version. They haven't come out with a single barrel, but when they originally did it, they did. And you get even more of that kind of sherry grapiness to it, which I love. So it's a fantastic beer, and a lot of us around here, around Springfield, were just thrilled that they brought it back. I considered drinking a barrel-aged Bigfoot tonight because that was one of my first loves. I first hated it, and then I first really loved it of barley wines, and I love the style as a whole. But it's a funny story. I went over to a friend's house for the Super Bowl in 2003, and I grabbed a 6-pack. They were still in 6-packs back then for Bigfoot. and I brought it over. Never had it before. I was like, young, and I wanted to try every single beer under the sun. Go to crack it open, taste it, and I immediately hated it. My friend said, "There's a bottle of Crown over there. Just go drink that." So I was drinking Crown all night, and I left that entire 5-pack of Bigfoot at his house. And it's funny because then a couple of years later, I'm trying to get all the Bigfoot I can, and I found a liquor store in Wichita, Global Liquor, that they were selling vertical 6-packs of Bigfoot for $47 for a 6-pack, and it was 04 through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 through 09. So I split that with a buddy, not really knowing a whole lot about the beer scene back then. I split it with my boss, and he wanted the old years because he didn't have those yet. So now I still have 07 through present with Bigfoot, and one days I'll crack through those verticals. But it was funny thinking back about how I hated it, and now I love it. But these barley wines, they're thick and chewy, a little sweet, like some of the notes you guys were talking about. I think about one of your beers was the leathery, maybe a little tobacco. Yeah, this has got kind of a little bit of that going on with it, and just so glad it's back. I hope they're able to produce it again next year.
All right.
Yeah, that sounds outstanding, Dan. And shout out to the Ozarks. My dad lived in Lebanon for quite a few years, quite a long time.
Yep, it's only about an hour away from here.
Quite the show. Quite the beers.
Hey, man, I've been to Lake of the Ozarks.
That counts.
I watched Ozark on Netflix. Does that count?
Speaking of Lake of the Ozarks, and we were talking about AB earlier, that is where they always had their lake house, and they used that as their test market. So back in the early 2000s when they rolled out Brass Knuckles or whatever their Guinness knockoff was called. I forgot what it was called. And then also their Heineken knockoff. They rolled out those very first anywhere in the world was right there in the Lake of the Ozarks market as their test market.
I wanted to piggyback off your story about the barrel-aged Bigfoot. I used to consider myself, when it was still called microbrews, there was a place locally here that used to have beer tastings. But my idea of microbrew was, maybe Sam Smith's old nut brown ale, maybe Guinness, that kind of thing. And went there one night, and after a couple of coarse and dunk ale, but kind of light stuff, I went up and there was this thing called barrel-aged Bigfoot, and I'd never had a barrel-aged beer, and I don't think I'd ever had a barley wine. And I literally did a spit take on that thing. It was so big and it was so foreign, to what I'd ever had that I was like, I can't drink this shit. I mean, I was horrified by it. And now I love it, of course.
Well, that was my first experience with Anchor beer. My first microbrew that I had was Anchor Porter, and it just made my head implode. It was so intense. And now you think of it, it's sort of on the lower scale of extremes. But I first had Bigfoot, just regular Bigfoot. There were no bourbon barrel aged beers back then, because I'm old. In 1992, and I used to manage this restaurant, and it was called Lion's Head Ale House, and it was the first all-craft beer bar in Metro Chicago, including downtown. I mean, Goose Island would bring their kegs out in a van. Larry Bell would bring his kegs out in a van just to drop them off and get people on this stuff. And that's where I first had Bigfoot. And just a quick story. My roommate at the time, he's also my cousin. He's a big guy. He's a big beer drinker and can really put it away. And they were having this how far back judging, for beer events and things like that goes. I mean, this is 1992, and they were having a judging exam in the restaurant during close time, and they asked me to come in and work it, and I told my roommate, "Come on, man, just this is going to be the most boring thing ever. So he just sat at the bar and he downed 6 pints, not just sifters, 6 pints of Bigfoot, and just kind of got up and walked away and disappeared, sort of. After the judging was over, or after the exam was over, all the people were like, I've never seen that before in my life. That's just inhuman.
That's amazing.
So, fun story about it. I mean, that's early days, early. You think about it. No craft beer bars ever, anywhere. Just that one in the south suburbs of Blue Island, south suburbs of Chicago.
Well, my earliest Bigfoot story was right around that early 90s, probably 1990, 91. I worked for a distributor in Northern Virginia that sold anchor steam, and one of the other counterparts of mine that I ran into accounts all the time had Sierra Nevada, and I always loved the Sierra Nevada beers back then. Well, fortunately, he had Bigfoot and I had Old Foghorn. So that was the easiest trade in the world. Every Christmas, we would swap those two. I would get him some Old Foghorn, and he would get me some Bigfoot. And here we are, many years later, still enjoying those beers. I know you mentioned Old Foghorn earlier in the show, Doug, and I wish we had. I actually do have one. It's actually in my beer fridge. I was able to find some this year at Merchants in Dearborn.
Let's just say we make it required homework. Find a book.
Absolutely, because it's one of the OGs of the barley wine tradition. So, shout out to Anchor Brewing Old Foghorn Ale. So I think that about does it, everybody. I think we're all getting close to blithering idiot status. So
time to shut our traps.
We're a bunch of old foghorns right now. So
yeah, I know, right?
I think we usually go around and ask anybody any final comments, but I think right now, we're ready to just go to Mexico with our old foghorns.
Just make sure you follow us on Twitter at Beer Nuts Podcast. You can email the show, beernutspodcast@christophermedia.net. Thank you, everybody who's listened, who's downloaded. It's encouraging. The download numbers just go up and up every week. So I have to thank everybody for that. Now that I'm getting accurate data, like I said, there's way more listeners than I ever thought, and they go up every show, every week. So thank you for that. So JR, let's just go to Mexico.
Yeah, public service announcement: do not brew with Tide Pods.
Yeah.
Barley wine is life. Barley wine is life. That's how we'll end this show. So, as they say in old Mexico City,
that sounded about right for barley wine.
BIL.
Yes.
Barley wine is life.
If you like this show, please tell a friend. Please follow us on Twitter and like and share us on Facebook by searching for Christopher Media. You can subscribe to all ChristopherMedia.net shows for free on ChristopherMedia.net. Please make sure to rate and comment on all your favorite Christopher Media shows. Thank you in advance for supporting Christopher Media by clicking on the PayPal button and by clicking through to all the sponsors who support ChristopherMedia.net. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net, and thank you for listening. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.
What makes Fairway the most unique market in New York City? We provide the best selection, period. 60 varieties of olives, 70 custom roasted coffees, 80 selections of fresh fish. Fairway, like no other market. Visit your local Fairway today.
It's 50 years of the ShopRite Can sale. 5 decades of unbeatable deals and this unforgettable song.
Now, ShopRite does the can, selling lots of brands of everything in cans.
Today's weekend section cash, so the ShopRite Can Dash. You'll save so much on every brand.
Now's the time
to shop at ShopRite's Can Dash.
Now's the time to stock up and save. Now's the time to stock up and celebrate.
Celebrating the 50th anniversary of the ShopRite Can sale. Stock up and save at ShopRite.